There we go. Okay.
Hello, Rebecca.
Hi. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. We're both a bit stressed, let's name it. We have to.
Yeah, the start to this was not without its technical difficulties, but we got there in the end, hopefully.
Attempt to have really good audio and video and everything. We went on a different platform. Now we're back on Zoom where we know, and just keep it simple. So.
Yes, that is sometimes the best story.
It is. Thank you so much for doing this. It's really exciting to have you as my first therapist on the Therapist Spotlight.
It's no problem.
Thing that we're creating for Therapist Corner, which is a whole new thing. But I just think, I know everybody's journey into private practice is so unique and different. And we love the behind the scenes of how people started, how you made the decision. And I think you've got some really interesting perspectives to share. So I know that anybody considering going into private practice is going to learn a lot from your journey.
Hopefully.
I know they will. I want you to take me right back to the beginning. And why did you decide to go into private practice? What made you make that leap, and what pushed you?
Well, that's a big question, and I'll try not to fill up too much of the time with it. But so I had just had a baby. This was around 2019, and I was planning on going back to the NHS after my maternity leave had finished. I was also struggling with postnatal depression at the time, and COVID had just hit.
Oh my God.
So we were all, when I eventually did go back after maternity leave, we were all working from home. So it was really difficult because the baby would be downstairs being cared for by someone else, and I would be upstairs trying to be a therapist with postnatal depression, but in the background I could hear the baby crying, and it was just this awful, really stressful situation I found myself in. I'd never been 100% happy. I found work in the NHS quite stressful sometimes.
Yeah. Were you in an IOP service? Is that
I
right?
was, yeah.
It's stressful, isn't it?
It's really stressful. As a PWP, I was seeing 7 people a day, and as a CBT therapist, 6. So it was always a very heavy caseload. There was very little autonomy with what came through your door. So yeah, it had always been a stressful environment, and not one that I particularly enjoyed, more because of the environment I was working in and the high levels of client contact and things like that. And so I'd never felt great about it. But on top of that, having a new baby, COVID, restricted working hours, it all just kind of came to a head, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. So as a couple, we looked at our options, and to pay for childcare, it was going to take nearly all of my husband's wage. I still needed some way to keep mentally active, because that's just the person I am.
And you love your job as well, don't you?
Yeah, and I never thought I would, because when you're at work, all you want to do is wait for the weekend. But when I wasn't at work, I really needed some mental stimulation. I wanted that client contact back, and didn't realize how much I missed having that there. So yeah, we had a complete role reversal. It was actually your YouTube video that I saw one day when I was
it makes me cringe, because I think years ago I used to do these really bad YouTube videos.
It was fantastic.
And was it the one where I talk about going from IAP to private practice? That one? Yeah, that is like the most popular one, which is interesting, isn't it?
I think I might have watched all of them, actually.
I
can remember just Googling it, because it was like, this could be an option. And finally getting the baby to go to sleep and coming downstairs, not knowing how long you've got to watch a YouTube video about it, and finding your video, and that kind of started everything, really.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was a very risky move to make, to kind of, because
when you talk about it, you know, just from that, because some of this I've obviously know we've worked together a long time now, but I've forgotten how much was going on for you at that time. When you say that COVID, postnatal depression, baby, you know, you think, okay, that's like a really bad time to go into private practice.
It felt a little bit make or break. I knew I couldn't be a stay-at-home mum. I knew that wasn't mentally doing me any good. Financially, it was better for my husband to take over the childcare. And I knew that mentally working in such a high pressured system with a child at home also wasn't really doing me any good. So I felt that other than just getting a completely different job altogether, I didn't have a lot of option really. And I know a lot of other therapists will have that parallel transition into private practice, where they'll have some clients whilst they might be working in a service like the NHS or something like that. And I'd never done private work before. So it felt quite scary doing that and taking that first step.
But at the same time, we did the
course,
coaching course, didn't we? Which is like a 4-week kind of building your private practice coaching course at that time that I did.
That was very it kind of played a huge part in me being
perfect timing, wasn't it?
It was perfect. It was like it was meant to be. But yeah, it provided me with kind of everything I need to ask all these questions that stopped me going into it. I had a platform there where I could just go to other therapists as well, and to yourselves running the course, you know, how do I do this? How would I manage this by myself in this solo arena, as it were? And yeah, so that kind of gave me that confidence to go out there and
it's so much easier when you see other people doing it, isn't it? And I know when I started out, there wasn't, which is one of the reasons that we have a bit of a platform for therapists now, because there just wasn't anybody doing it.
Absolutely. But no, it was very instrumental in me ending up on the path that I did, and as you say, perfect timing for me.
Do you remember what your real initial fears were?
The therapists I'd known who worked in private practice had always done it within their own homes, which wasn't an option for me. With having a new baby in the house all the time, it was noisy, it just wasn't practical. So firstly, it was thinking, how do I do this? How do I rent a room? It sounds simple, but when you've never done things like that,
it's scary, isn't it? The responsibility.
How do you manage tax and insurance and all these other things that kind of come into play? And how do you manage risk? Because I think for most people working in places like the NHS, when you do come across risk, there's procedures that you go through, and it sounds silly, but when you've never worked on your own, it's like, do those same procedures apply? How do you manage it on your own? How do I get a supervisor? All those questions are there and can definitely be prevented.
And how did you manage them then? What were the things that kind of helped you kind of manage risk better in private practice?
I remember actually coming to the coaching course and saying, if I have a safeguarding issue, do I still follow these same procedures? And asking all those questions, kind of writing them down and saying, and I'll be fair, when I was sat there and there was other therapists on that course who were already established and had gone there for a little bit further advice and things, and I thought, what if they think I'm really silly asking these questions? But I'm so glad I asked them, because
I think we all start with those questions, don't we? So
definitely. But it did give me that peace of mind to be able to kind of go out there and do that. The person that I rented my room for already ran his own business, so he put me in touch with an accountant who explained to me how I sort out tax and things, those huge questions, because you just don't do those things, do you? It's all done by your employer.
And it feels massive, doesn't it? It feels absolutely huge, but then you just took those little steps, and
that's it. I think it's that breaking it down into those smaller steps makes the situation a lot easier to manage rather than seeing it as this whole huge thing. If you can set yourself a goal each week as you're working towards building that private practice, eventually you get there and it doesn't feel like that mammoth task. And if there are questions that you've got, you know, if you've got colleagues, supervisors, people like yourself you can trust, and you can go out there and ask those questions too, do it, and don't worry how silly you feel asking those questions, because they open that door then to being able to do this.
Yeah, because there's so many people that have gone before you that are doing it, that there is that help out there. How long have you been in private practice now? Remind me how many?
August this year it'll be coming up to 3 years, which just feels like it has
3 years. That has flown, hasn't it? And tell me what your working week looks like now. How many clients do you see in a week? You know,
I see anywhere between 15 and 20 clients in a week, and that works for me. It took me a long time to establish a nice balance that I like to work in. At the beginning, obviously, you've got to build up that client base, and you don't at the start have that many people coming in, because a lot of what you do is word of mouth and all that sort of thing.
Because you just see self-referring clients, don't you? You don't do any referral work or anything. So, you know, which is how I wish, if I could go back, that's how I would start off. I didn't. I went down the referral agency route, but it wasn't for me. But you kind of, that's where you've started.
Yeah, I started off with 2 people and then went, oh my God, have I made a really huge mistake? I've only got 2 clients, and that 2 became 3. And I'd have said it was probably over the course of about 8 to 9 months to sort of really build up to a full case.
What was most effective in getting you from 2 clients? Well, where did you get your first 2 from? Let's start there. Well, and we want to know what was most effective in getting your caseload up in terms of marketing.
Well, as I say, at first, when I started the practice, it was during COVID. So it was very difficult to build that client base anyway, because a lot of people who were going to pay for therapy wanted to see someone face to face. I don't think that's the case for everybody, especially now as time's gone on, but that's what it definitely felt like. So I ended up with 2 clients via Zoom, and I found those 2 clients just literally by advertising on Facebook on the local groups that were around me, and putting things onto my own page and developing my web page. That's kind of how those 2 people came to me. And so
Facebook, and you set up a website.
Yeah, and on that website you can do an online submission if you wish to come to my practice, and that is how those 2 clients came through to me. Facebook's good for advertising because it's free. Well, it is to an extent. You can obviously boost your posts and pay for that and things. But yeah, that was primarily how I did it. I didn't have any money on the offset of the business to put any sort of signage outside the building I was in or anything like that. So all that came later. I'm in quite a busy area, so there's a lot of passing traffic, so I think that helps with having signs on the building outside. That kind of,
it does for me. I know that's made a massive difference, having signage. It really does, doesn't it? To the point now I've taken mine away, trying to slow down my caseload. But and when you're trying to build up that private practice, if you can get signage, it's really, really good, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of it is word of mouth as well. I think once you started seeing people and people like the work that you do, they tell other people.
And how long did it take you to get word of mouth? Because that is, you know, you have to see clients to get that word of mouth. They have to have a good experience and then how long did that take for the word?
I would have said probably in about that sort of 6 to 7 months sort of period, where people started to come and say, oh, I've been told about you by someone else, and that started to be more of a regular thing. But it did take a while.
It took me a while.
Business cards in places, shops, gyms, doctors' surgeries, wherever they'd let me.
Has that worked okay for you, putting business cards around? I just felt that didn't work well for me, but I know different things work for different people in different areas. True.
It just depends where you are, doesn't it? But yeah, it seems to be quite effective, really. I've had quite a few people say, oh, I picked up your card from here or there. So yeah,
and in terms of just going back to your Facebook group, was that on you? Did you get your first clients from your Facebook page, or was that going into local community groups and answering questions, or
it was
posting?
more going into groups?
Yeah, so where there's established communities, because I think that's important, isn't it? People can put a lot of work into their Facebook pages, but the algorithms aren't great now. But if you go to established communities, then
a lot of them have certain days that you can put your adverts out in, and things like that. And I've also found that initially I used to get very hung up on how much people had liked to post, and whether that, you know, was reflective of whether they would come to me for therapy. But a lot of the time I found when I've spoke to people about this, when they said, oh, I saw your advert on Facebook, they'll say, oh, I didn't want to like the post because I didn't want anyone to know that I had difficulties. So even though you might not be seeing the kind of results, if you will, in likes and comments, I don't think it's that you aren't being seen, because
I mean, I have a Facebook page for Therapist Corner, and I post quite regularly. I think something goes out most days. Nobody, like 1 or 2 likes, no comments. So if anybody comes to the page, they'll be like, what is she doing? Like, this is dead as a doornail. Yeah. And it can be the same. It's a little bit better engagement on Instagram, but Facebook is like dead as a doornail. But people come through, they are clicking through, so it actually drives so much traffic to my website. And that's all automated now, so I'm not having to manually do it, really. That's a really good and do you feel like you needed a website from the beginning?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know whether everybody needs a website from the beginning, but I found that it was beneficial for me just to sort of explain who I am, what my qualifications are, where, you know, pictures of the building they would be going to, because therapy, especially if you've never been, is really daunting. So I think that was definitely a positive thing for me, having the contact details on there. Now I've got a blog on there, which is great for advertising as well, because you can direct people to that. Or if people just ask you general questions, you can say, oh, maybe you want to have a read of this. And so that's been really useful.
And how long in did you think this is working? So from kind of, you left the NHS into private practice, you know, you're a young baby, you were kind of struggling with your health, weren't you? And the pandemic was on. So, you know, prime conditions for setting your own business up. And you started as a limited company as well, didn't you?
I did.
So you pay your husband, don't you? He's your
admin. He's my admin.
And he's not great, is he? I hear, because we do a lot of work together, I hear about how his personal development reviews are going, and
he's been shoddy. I'll tell you what, I couldn't do my IT without him.
No, you couldn't. He has been helpful on this, so we have to give him that. So he's employee of the month this month, but
I think he's like any of us when we work together, ups and downs, the peaks and troughs in performance.
Because I was like 8 years in before I went to a limited company. Was that scary for you too? Because you have 2 options, sole trader or a limited company. Why limited company?
I just spoke to the accountant and he said to me, basically, which do you want to do? And I sort of went, I want to be in this for the long haul. I want to make it a thing. So I felt like that would be, that's how I wanted to do it. I didn't feel like I wanted to make that transition part way through. So I didn't see any kind of any reason not to. So that is what I did.
I've worked with a few people that go for it straight away, and I think there's lots of benefits of just setting up like that.
It was sort of all from the start then. I got the accountants to make me wage slips and things like that, because I just feel more comfortable having that kind of setup where everything's managed for me, because I'm not great at the math side of things.
No, I wasn't. That is one of the things that if I could go back, I would definitely kind of get an accountant from the start, definitely. And what would you say is the most rewarding thing now about running your own private practice?
It is definitely the freedom that it gives you. It took me a while to establish a working week that I enjoyed having. When I say a while, I'd have probably said it's only been in this last year where I've actually gone, these are the days that I like to work, and these are the ones that I want to have off work, and sort of figured out why I want those days off work and how what days clients like. So I will work a Thursday, a Friday, and a Saturday. And I was always one of these people who lived for the weekend. Whereas now I realise how busy Fridays and Saturdays are if you go to town or you visit somewhere. And I think, but people are off work and they like to come for therapy then as well. So that works much better for me to do that. And it gives me so much freedom during the week, knowing exactly when I'm going to be off, especially with a young child.
Because you talk about your time you have with your daughter, and it just feels like you have so much time together as a family. It's lovely.
Well, we homeschool as well, so she's due to start a school, normal school in September, but we homeschool her, and so that gives us that flexibility and that opportunity to both do some of that learning time with her as well,
which you just wouldn't get in a normal kind of 9-to-5 thing.
Absolutely.
And how is it, what people want to know is, what's the money like for you? How's it worked out financially? Because we have to get to the crux of the questions that people
absolutely
worked out. Okay.
I don't live in the most affluent area, and I remember at the very beginning pricing myself in quite low comparatively to other therapists, sort of in the area that I'm in. And people came in, and then I thought gradually as it got busier and the cost of living rose as well, started off charging £70 per hour for my sessions. I charged 50 for an assessment, and I priced them differently because I thought if people came in for an assessment, they might not go ahead with the therapy, so it was a bit of a taster for them rather than that initial outlay.
Okay.
I think from what you said, it probably doesn't matter. You charge for an hour's work at the end of the day. But that's how I initially started out. And then as the cost of living rose, I gradually rose it by sort of £5 increments until where I am now, which is £80 for the hour's work. And to be fair, I've not seen a downturn in referrals. I know some therapists who charge more than that and some who might charge slightly less, but people seem to, I don't know whether it's waiting lists in other services, but I think, even though I'm not in the most affluent area in the world, people do seem to want to come for therapy, and the increments in the price doesn't seem to have stopped people coming in.
Yeah, but like you say, there's always people charging less or more, so there's generally a wide range, isn't there? And do you think it kind of matches your NHS salary, or is it a bit better, or?
It doesn't match it, but I think it could if I saw more clients in a week, but I definitely value the home time more than that.
That's really important for you, isn't it?
It always has been, just to have that work-life balance.
For where you are with your young family
of home. But I think there is definitely scope to match your NHS salary if you wanted to.
And what have been your biggest challenges, would you say?
Biggest challenges, it can be isolating sometimes working, but then when I actually compare that to working in the NHS, as time went on, we stopped having a base we could go to where there was a team, and the working was very isolated anyway. And especially during COVID, when meetings would be via Zoom and you didn't really get that full-on connection with a person. So yes, it's isolated, and there isn't always someone there to ask if I'm a bit unsure about something. But you have your supervisor there, you do tend to meet other therapists when you work in private practice, be that online, because you spend a lot of time online promoting and talking to other people, and you make friends outside of the professional friends outside of that remit that you normally would.
So your network just looks different, doesn't it? There are other ways of building it up, and I think you do need that connection and support.
Absolutely. So it does feel less isolating than it first felt, where you don't have that network around you, but that network soon builds up. It's not something that takes a long time. People are very friendly in this community.
Yeah.
And that's
And
been
if somebody's
helpful.
listening to this thinking that they're kind of thinking that they're inspired by your story and maybe wanting to take that step, what advice would you give them? What would you have liked to have known when you'd started? Is there anything that would
It's just not as difficult as what you think it's going to be.
Yeah.
It's like I said about having those small steps, and I think if you can see them as small steps instead of one huge thing, break it down and think, what area do I want to work in? Do I want to practice from my own home? Do I want to practice online? Do I want to practice in a building that's separate from everything? And breaking it down and going, okay, so that's where I want to be. How am I going to build that client base up? And just making sure that you're not seeing it as this huge picture. It's not as scary as what it first appears to be.
Lots of us do it and we do it fine, and we're no good at maths and we're rubbish at IT, but we can navigate our way.
Yeah, and you know what? I've talked about a lot of the stuff that appears at first difficult when you're going into private practice, but it's also a lot of fun. You get that creativity of being able to design your own room, have your own colour scheme, all those lovely things that when you work in for somebody else, you don't have any autonomy over. The little things that just make your day a bit more interesting. You get to write a blog. You get to do all these little bits of things that work towards promoting your business, but are actually really nice.
Really good fun. Yeah, really good to do.
It's not all, when I worked in the NHS, my day was very much about you go in, you see your patients one after the other. There's sometimes very little time for a lunch break. You come home, you're worried that you might not have got all your notes done in time and things, but you can structure your week so much better and your time so much better, and you don't have to just stick to the mundane, of the everyday. There's so many other aspects to your work that you can do and you can branch out into. So yeah, as much as there being all these potentially scary things, there's actually a lot of fun to be had as well. So it becomes quite a nice thing.
And where are you going? So what will the next few years? So you've done 3 years and you've built it up, very successful, very happy, great work-life balance, and lovely for a young family. What are the next 3 years going to look like? What are you going to be doing?
There's definitely things that I want to do. I've just started writing the blog. I'd love to take that into a podcast or something like that and develop that further, because I really like that aspect of the job. There's different areas I'd like to train in. I'd love to do my EMDR training. That's another thing with private practice as well. You have the scope to kind of go, I like to do that training and I'm going to do it. Whereas when you work with someone else, you don't. You wait until you can be told you can go on the training.
Well, there's funding available and
definitely. But to be quite honest with you, the lifestyle that the private practice has given me, if I was still doing that in another 3 years, exactly where I am now, I'd be quite
that's so nice. How many people can say that as well?
That's it. There's definitely scope for things that you can do, but yeah, if I'm where I am in another 3 years,
that's amazing. So it's been the right decision for you then?
Yes, 100%. I wouldn't have changed it.
Do you do coaching and supervision? Is that something you're going to build out?
I don't, but it's definitely something that I've thought about. And yeah, I really
that was my gentle nudge in that direction, because you definitely should be doing.
Well, I have a degree in education before I went into therapy, and I quite like that sort of coaching aspect of thing and teaching and stuff. So if I could mush the two together, that'd be great.
So if somebody was interested in getting in touch with you or just wants to follow more about your journey and see everything that you've done, where can they find you? Where are you most active?
Usually on Instagram or Facebook. There's my website, which is littlemooretherapypractice.co.uk, and I'm Littlemoor Therapy Practice on Facebook as well, and at Littlemoor Therapy Practice on Instagram. So people can drop me an email. All my contact details are on there.
Lovely. I will put all the links everywhere. You need to be on Substack as well. That's because it's a blogging and podcast platform. So
yes, that will be my next job.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much for doing this for me. And I'm sure people, you know, if you think about you know, you're giving back now, aren't you? You're going to be one of those videos that somebody very new to this is going to watch and think, I want a business just like Rebecca.
I know, and that feels so weird from where I've come from as this mum struggling with postnatal depression in the middle of COVID in a stressful job to going, wow, I'm nearly like that lady I watched on YouTube.
And it's been amazing because I've been very lucky to be part of your journey from the absolute start, haven't I? And so to watch your confidence grow has just been like, I wish I could have taken snapshots or little videos. We should have done this every year and just, you know, had a bit of an update because people wouldn't believe it, you know.
Oh yeah, if you could have a video growth chart, that'd be great.
Yeah, and just in terms of building your client base, like you're like, will it ever work? And it just slowly.
Well, I can remember in that, just going back to what we were talking about, I'd started the business in August, and by the following December, I said, if things don't pick up by March, then we'll close, and that'll be it. And then all of a sudden, it just boomed in that last 3 months. So
the first year, I mean, bearing in mind that, you know, you didn't do the referral routes, this is self-referring clients a year, and I would agree with that, you know. I mean, that slowed down my kind of work with, you know, I've come to that a lot later on. I wish I'd done it from the start like you did, but I do think it's that year of getting everything established, isn't it? So
definitely,
the way I did it was I stayed working in the NHS for a while and built my private work up, and then once I was kind of good enough to go, I made the leap.
No, absolutely. I think everyone says that whatever business you start up in, that first year is the one that's the difficult year, and then after that everything seems to just fall into place then. But
and that's a lovely note to finish on. And if I'm still doing this in 3 years' time, you'll have to come back. You have to keep coming back.
Yes, and you can say, are you still the same and happy? And I'll be like, yeah, here I am.
Fantastic. Oh, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you to you for speaking to me and for all of your support as well.
It's been an absolute pleasure. You take care.
You too, Sarah. Bye.
Bye. Let me stop this now.